Hey everybody, it's me, Erin and Elyse. Welcome back to my channel and another episode of Purple Chair Chats. Yes, I know my chair is not actually purple, but for some reason I've always referred to it as the purple chair, and I'm going to keep doing so even though it's more of a dusty rose, but to me it's the purple chair. So this video is going to be posted on Remy's 4-month birthday, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about my postpartum experience so far. I think it would be therapeutic for me to talk about it because this has been obviously one of the greatest times of my life, but also one of the absolute hardest. And I hope it also would be helpful to other moms out there, either by being relatable or, I don't know, maybe there's other expecting moms that maybe it would be nice to know a little bit what to expect. I just need to get this out. And so that's what we're going to do today. As I mentioned in my previous Purple Chair Chat, Remy was born via a planned C-section November 11th, 2019. We were in the hospital 5 days, checked in first thing Monday morning, and checked out late Friday afternoon. So the first thing I want to talk about is what my experience was in the hospital. C-section actually went fine. The actual procedure, the epidural, like I talked about before, was really the worst part. The actual surgery wasn't that bad. I mean, it's still no joke. It's major abdominal surgery. So surgery went fine. The first day, I didn't feel too much pain because of the epidural and whatever else they give you via your IV. But I knew I didn't want to keep that IV in. It was the first one I'd ever had and it was uncomfortable. I also didn't want to be taking any like narcotic type pain medicine. So that was taken out by the second day, and I just took like extra strength Motrin the rest of the time I was there. I'm very surprised that that is all I needed. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't hurting and uncomfortable, but it was definitely manageable by just taking the Motrin. And I also didn't want to feel loopy in the head. The whole first day I was woozy. When they finally let me have ice chips, because I was so thirsty from like fasting, I ended up throwing up, which this normal, but still, like, I was just laying there and then I was like, whoop. So I was like, I don't like this, let's just not. Yeah, so that's what I did for pain management. So chatty. The first night is actually when they made me stand up. So not even 24 hours after the surgery. It was probably around 5 o'clock, late afternoon, because it was still my first nurse and the nurses changed over like at 6:30. So getting up for that first time after the C-section was incredibly difficult. It hurt, like using your stomach to like sit up was very hard. So they make you like roll on your side and then kind of pull yourself up and then ease your legs over the side and then push up. Now, when I actually got to the point of my feet were on the ground and I tried to stand up, I got super dizzy and shaky, so they had me just lay back down and were like, we'll try this again in a few hours. New nurse comes along and I get up again closer to like 10:30 or 11 that night. And I was super motivated to get out of bed because Remy was up in the NICU the whole first day and a half, and the only way I was going to be able to see him was if I could get myself out of bed, go get cleaned up a bit in the bathroom so that I could be wheeled in a wheelchair to the NICU, which in the hospital we were in, they're doing construction, so the NICU was actually really far away, so I had to be able to like handle that trek. I was successful that second time, and the main thing I would say to anyone else planning or the possibility of having a C-section is get up and walk around as much as possible. What they say, I mean, they say to do that. They say that's the best thing you can do, and I truly believe that now after going through it. The rest of the week, I truly could feel myself getting stronger and stronger. And yeah, so definitely if you have a C-section, get up and move around as soon as you're able to. Having a C-section, you still bleed after you wear the gigantic pads and disposable underwear. I don't think it's as bad as if you have a normal vaginal delivery, just because I think they kind of suck some stuff out when you're cut open. I don't know, I could be wrong. I should educate myself on that. But anyways, that was still something I experienced with the C-section, and it lasted, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks maybe. I mean, it's just kind of like a super heavy period. Not anything crazy. Like, everything I read about it was like, I'm thinking it's gonna be super, super intense, and at least for me, it wasn't that bad. It was really hard just not having Remy there to start with, and this is gonna kind of lead into my struggle and failure to breastfeed. And now he sounds like he's getting busty. Hold, please. Let's see how long this lasts. Do you see yourself? You're so cute. You're so cute. So, as I mentioned, Remy did spend his first day and a half in the NICU because of some breathing issues he had. Obviously, he's fine now. That meant we barely had any skin-to-skin time, and he still had to eat. I had a C-section, so it took me a really long time to be able to get up there to him. So they had to give him a bottle. He had to eat. I think that could have had a play in why breastfeeding was so hard for me. When I did finally make it up to the NICU, I think it was the next morning. Yeah, the next morning they did give him to me, and we attempted breastfeeding and had very mild success. Like I said, he still wasn't doing that great, so we tried there. He was brought down late the afternoon of the second day. And of course, we tried breastfeeding again. The nurses showed me different ways to hold him and try to get him to latch. And basically, he would lay there with my boob in his mouth and just kind of, and then he'd get really fussy because he's hungry. He would not latch. He just sat there with his mouth on me. He would literally latch on anything else. You stuck your finger in his mouth, a pacifier, little pre-made bottles that hospitals have. Like, he would latch and suck on anything but me. And we tried, like I said, all these different positions. I tried one of those little shield things that you put on because maybe I just wasn't a good shape for him, if you know what I mean. That didn't work either. But I was very determined. I didn't want to give up. So I was like, well, I at least want to get him breast milk. I mean, I was producing colostrum. So they showed me how to hand express it. So I would sit there with a plastic spoon and hand express colostrum into the spoon, and then use a little tiny syringe and suck it up into the syringe so we could like squirt it in his mouth. Not really how I imagine feeding my child, but I did that for a few days. Also, they had me pumping. You don't want, this was a very hard time for both of us. They had me pump or hand express every 3 hours to simulate feeding him, because newborns feed every 2 to 3 hours. So we were trying to trick my body into, still producing milk. Would sit there. We set alarms for all during the night and try to stimulate, and it just barely anything would come out. And I know it can take a while for your milk to come in, but I don't know. It's the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. Every time we would attempt breastfeeding with him, like I said, he'd just sit there, and then he'd get frustrated, and he'd turn bright red and start screaming and crying, and then I would get panicked because I'm like, I just want to feed my baby. He's hungry. There's, a bajillion people coming in all the time to like check my vitals and check on him, and everybody and their brother has seen my boobs at this point, and I'm pretty modest, I'd say. I mean, never experienced showing off any of my bits before, but I tell you what, after you have a baby, you don't care who sees you, because, I mean, everyone but the janitor basically comes in your room to check, and it got super overwhelming super fast. So he would cry and scream, I would end up crying and get totally overwhelmed. I got to the point where I didn't even want to hold him, because it was so stressful and hard. Like, yeah, I know. This is hard to talk about. Okay, let's try come back, because he needs a nap. BRB. And we're back in a new chair. So Remy is now down for a nap. Hopefully I don't wake him up by talking. He does have on his white noise machine, so we should be good, but nevertheless, I'm not going to talk too loud. Hopefully it's loud enough for the video, but oh well, what you gonna do? As I was discussing, breastfeeding kicked my butt. My mental health plummeted real fast. Just because literally the only time I was getting with Remy was when we were trying to breastfeed, and every time we tried, he got really upset really fast. And then I even, started getting to the point where I was like, okay, well, if he won't latch, then let me at least pump and I'll just bottle feed him breast milk. Like, fine. Like, it's still not what I envisioned as the way I wanted to feed my baby, but like, he's at least still gonna get all of the good nutrients or whatever goes along with breastfeeding, so let's try that. So I didn't completely give up on trying to get him to latch and actually breastfeed, but I was okay with pumping or hand expressing. We actually had more success hand expressing than I did with using the actual pump, the hospital grade pump. And I just want to give also a huge shout out to Adam. Don't cry. This is something I also never thought about happening, or it never even came into my mind as something that we might have to do together as a team, but every 3 hours when I would either hand express or attempt to pump, he was right there with me helping. So the hand expressing can really be like a two-person job. So he would stand with the plastic spoon under me, ready to catch whatever little drops I could get to come out, because from looking down, like, it would be kind of hard to see. So he would stand there and help like scoop whatever we could get to come out of me. And it's like, I don't know. He's truly a fantastic partner, and never pressured me to breastfeed or pump. He just supported me in whatever I wanted to do, and whatever would be best for Remy. So I love you, Chugs. So we continued trying to get Remy to latch, continued trying to get colostrum out, and in between all of that, Remy, of course, has to eat. I was not producing nearly enough to feed him. What tiny bit we could get out was like I said, maybe 1 milliliter, one tiny little syringe. So we had to continue giving him those little pre-made bottles. There's also another area we struggled in the whole time we were at the hospital, was not only with breastfeeding, but bottle feeding him. Like, we just had a hard time feeding him all around. We tried holding him different ways, and he just ate super, super, super slow. And the nurses were telling us that he spent so much effort trying to eat that he was like burning more calories than he was taking in. So every day he was losing more and more weight, till it got to the point where, like, last day, if he lost any more weight, even a little bit, they weren't going to let us take him home. So all of this is like in my head, like just the whole feeding, and like it's one of the main ways you bond with your baby when they're first born. And it was just a total disaster and not enjoyable at all. It was just stress. And the other frustrating thing was all of the nurses we had were super helpful, but they all had different advice. Like literally every nurse told us something different with either breastfeeding and positioning or with bottle feeding. Like, so by like day 3 or 4, we're like, okay, so none of it's working. We're just overloaded with information, and I'm hurting because I just was cut open, and we're sleep deprived, and we're not in our own home. So it's just, whoa, it was hard. The other really, really hard part was because I had hand expressed or pumped every 3 hours. All that stimulation caused me to become really badly engorged, and my boobs being engorged hurt way worse than my C-section incision. It was so uncomfortable. They were like hot to the touch, hard. I started getting like big lumps even all the way up under my arms and my armpits, which maybe I just didn't educate myself enough, but that is what can happen when you become engorged, because all these nodes are like connected. And being engorged doesn't necessarily mean that your boobs are just super full of milk and they need to be drained. I mean, that can be part of it, but it's just like everything in there is just so swollen and stimulated that then it becomes hard to express milk. And the terrible thing about it is, to get relief, you need to express some of it, but that just further stimulates it. So it's like this circle you're in. So it was just awful. Like, so I'm in tears over just struggling to feed him, and then I'm in tears because I'm in pain top and bottom. And it's like just everything else. Your hormones are insanely out of whack. So it was just so incredibly overwhelming. Like, I just was panicking. Like, what do I do? How do I get relief? And one of the lighter parts of my days in the hospital would be when Adam and I would walk the halls, because like I said, walking was actually really good to heal with C-section. And we would walk together and push Remy in his little box, and we just talked, just the two of us, about things and how we were feeling, because it's like we never had a ton of visitors. It was just my mom and his mom, and then my brother and sister-in-law would come sometimes in the evenings, but otherwise, like, we hadn't had any like visitors. We actually told people, don't come, like, we're too much a mess to enjoy seeing people. But anyways, like, walking the halls and it just being us, no nurses, no family, just two of us. Like, we could just talk openly about how we were doing. And I finally told Adam that I just had these feelings of just all I wanted to do was run away, that I didn't get any joy out of holding Remy, and I just didn't think that I could continue breastfeeding because of all that. So I told him that, and he was super supportive, and he's like, we got to do what's best to feed him and to have good mental health. And Remy he'll get food and he'll be fine. Formula fed babies are fine. I myself was a formula fed baby and I'm perfectly fine. What we decided Remy needed more than breast milk was a stable mother and a happy mother. So before we even left the hospital, I made the very tough decision to not continue trying breastfeeding. Nurses had also told me that once I went home, if I wanted to continue to try, I would have to use a hospital grade pump. I couldn't use one that you can just buy like at Target, and I'd have to rent it from someplace. And I was just like, that's just nuts, and it just got, I don't know, there was just so many things that made me feel like I can't do this. And I felt really bad for a really long time, like a failure, like I didn't try hard enough, that breastfeeding is hard. I had always heard that. I didn't expect it to just become this magical thing, like mother goddess, like I knew it would be hard. I just didn't know it would be that taxing on me mentally. So I just decided, like, I'm not even gonna continue trying to pump because I was in so much pain. And some of the nurses were like really aggressive with trying to get Remy to breastfeed, and I think that was part of it that pushed me over. Like, one nurse literally had like his head and was like, "Suck, baby, suck." It was like shoving him on me while he's crying and I'm crying. I haven't mentioned this either, but I did meet with literally every single lactation consultant the hospital had on staff, and just nothing was working, and I was just like plummeting. So once I made the decision to not continue breastfeeding or pumping, my next obstacle was finding relief for my terribly engorged boobs. Like I said, one way to get relief is to express milk or colostrum, or stand in a warm shower and express it out, but that's also stimulating it to make more. So every time I showered, they were like, "Don't let the water hit you in your front." Like, so I'm like hunched over trying to bathe. Like, don't wear clothing that can like rub, like wear like a tight like sports bra type of thing. But it still hurts so bad. And one of the nurses that she'd been like super encouraging and pushy and confusing with breastfeeding, she's all those things, but she was equally sweet and kind and understanding, to where like she saw me crying and she's like, "Tell me what's wrong." And she's the one that told me that, above all else, Remy needs a stable, happy mom. So even though she was very, very pro breastfeeding, she was more pro stable mind. So I don't know if it's something in her culture or if this is a common thing, but she actually told us one way to help relieve my boobs was to put frozen cabbage leaves on them. Never in my wildest dreams had I ever thought I'd be in the hospital having a baby and then having frozen cabbage leaves on my boobs. But I was at a point where if you had told me, "Go find doggy doo-doo and rub it on your boobs for relief," I would have tried it. I didn't care. I was like, yes, please. So Adam went, he got cabbage, they ripped it into big leaves, put it in a bag, and kept it in the nurse's freezer at their nurse's station. And I would call and on the little beeper and be like, "Hey, can you bring me some of my frozen cabbage?" Some of the nurses were not all in the loop that I had frozen cabbage, and they were like, "Wait, what do you want?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have some frozen cabbage in your freezer. Can you bring it to me, please?" So yeah, that happened. I don't know if it actually helped or not. Apparently there's enzymes in cabbage leaves that help with that, and a lot of women now that I've read more about it, use it when they're weaning their baby and they're trying to get their breast milk to stop. So I used frozen cabbage. I also bought these little booby ice packs, and I would sit on the couch when I did get home with just anything frozen on me. Frozen peas, little ice packs, like anything, and like a towel, because oh my god, with the cabbage, the smell was just awful, because when it's frozen it doesn't really have an odor, but as it sits on your warm body and defrosts and kind of wilts on you, it's so stinky. Like, I still to this day, I don't know if I can eat cabbage for a while. My boobs stayed engorged probably a week and a half, and it, like I said, it was so painful, so painful. So yeah, that is my breastfeeding experience. Now back to just feeding Remy in general. The really frustrating thing was that we were in the hospital, like I said, 5 days, and everybody was very willing and ready to share tips and tricks to breastfeed, to pump, to hand express, but hardly any nurse or any staff gave us much info on even how to just bottle feed a slow eater. The nurse that actually told me about the cabbage leaves was really close to the head NICU nurse, so she got in touch with her and made sure she came and stopped down by our room before we left the last day. And that nurse ended up being like heaven sent angel. She said she remembered seeing Remy in the NICU, and she was surprised that they released him when they did, that she thought he needed to stay up there longer. So that also could have had a play in some of this. But anyways, she just had such a calming presence, talked very confidently about her views on feeding. She said, you don't want to force your baby to feed. Like when you first wake up, do you want someone to immediately drag you out of bed and shove a bowl of cereal in your face and like say, eat, eat? So you don't do that to your baby. You very gently encourage them to eat and like give them a minute to get going. And she showed us this position to hold him. She said that is great for babies like him who are slow eaters or who have had difficulty eating. And what she showed us was laying him on our knees on his side and feeding him that way, laying down on our knees on his side. And when she did that with him, he immediately downed more formula than he had ever done the whole stay we were there. And if it weren't for her, I think maybe we would have been discharged, but we would have had to readmit him because he was losing weight so much. So I'll never forget her, just because she showed us finally how to feed our baby and have a happy baby. And that is how we fed him when we got home, and he did great. If you've seen him, I mean, I was just holding him earlier in the video. He's a little chunker now, clearly has no problem eating. Now that he's bigger, I do hold him like in my arm and feed him this way. But laying him on the knees like that worked wonders. And she told us it's kind of like he's in a similar position as if he would be breastfeeding, like, because if you hold your baby breastfeeding, they're sideways like that. So from the time we were discharged and home, Remy was formula fed. That is my breastfeeding struggling story. Moving on. Remy's still asleep. The next thing I want to talk about is postpartum depression and anxiety. A lot of it was, I think, triggered by my struggle to breastfeed, but there's also a lot of other things going on in life that I was able to handle before he was born, but once he was born, I just was so quick to become overwhelmed and anxious and just feeling just defeated. Like, even once we were home, it was so much better to be in our own space, but I still had those feelings of, I just want to run away. I just want to run until I can't run anymore and just collapse. And Remy wasn't even the source of it, I don't think, because you read a lot about postpartum depression is you have feelings of wanting to harm yourself or the baby, or I never had those feelings. So maybe it's just regular depression just brought on by having a baby. But so I was having all these feelings. I've mentioned in some older videos and my coming back video that my family's gone through a very, very hard time. And it's not something I want to go super deep into just because it is, family private stuff. But after nearly 40 years together, my parents have split. When it first happened, it was incredibly abrupt and blindsided us. Like, we didn't see it coming. Like, my dad left. So it's been a few years that it's been kind of back and forth until it was finally decided they're gonna go forward with their divorce. And that all happened like right after Remy was born, like going through with all that. And I don't know what it's like to go through a parent's divorce when you're a child, but as an adult, I think it's just as hard, just a different way, because you've seen this couple, this unit, your whole life that you've depended on and seen as an example of what you want for yourself one day, because there was never any hint that this could ever be a possibility. Now that it is reality, it's incredibly hard to accept. And it's one of those things, like when Remy was born, my mom was in town, but my dad didn't come because it would be too hard. Like it would just be too much for the two of them to be together. So he came and visited later, and it's just things like that. It's like growing up, you think, oh, well, when I have my first baby, of course, mom and dad are both going to be there to welcome him. But now everything has to be done separately, and it just sucks. I mean, things have, I don't want to say gotten better, but maybe I'm just more used to the idea now. Like, I talked to my dad, and he said he did come visit, and I'm just still learning this new life picture of my parents being apart. So that's going on. And then just, obviously you have a baby, your hormones are totally out of whack. My boobs killed me. No sleep, all that's going on. About a month after Remy was born, Noodle, our dog, the girl dog, started having accidents in the house. Literally, like every 2 hours, she would pee. And we're renting a small apartment, carpeted. I'm OCD, and I have to have things in their proper place and clean and smelling fresh and nice. And everything else is already chaotic because, you know, life is upside down when you have a newborn. And then the dog starts peeing everywhere. So, like, sleep deprived, cleaning up pee. If my mama hadn't been here with me, she was with me for 6 weeks. I don't know what I would have done because Adam only got 1 week off. We eventually took Noodle to the vet because we thought, well, maybe it's a behavioral thing, but then we realized, no, like she acted like Remy's like her puppy. Like, she never seemed stressed by him. She just immediately like bonded to him. So we took her to the vet and found out she is diabetic. She now has insulin shots twice a day, 6:30 a.m. and p.m., and has to be on special food. It's all really expensive, but you do what you got to do to care for your fur baby because they're a family too. So that happened when Remy was like a month old, and then about a month after that, Pippin's health, our boy dog, his health declined, and we're still trying to figure out what's his trouble. So, he's had full blood work done, urinalysis, everything came back fine, but he does these like jolt things. He's like seemingly to losing his eyesight. Like, he'll just stand in a spot and like zone out. He doesn't have the energy that he had before. And they told us we could take him to a neurologist for an MRI, but that's like $3,000, and we clearly don't have that. So that's all going on. It's just super heavy. Yeah. Like, I don't like to share sad things. Like, if you follow me on Instagram, it's very lighthearted and silly and just lots of cute baby pictures, but this is all going on as well. This is just all on top of being postpartum and adjusting to life as a parent and adjusting to your new body, because you come home it takes you 9 months to grow this little person, and you have this big belly, and it's like firm, and you feel your little baby moving around, and you come home from the hospital and it's like this squish emptiness. And when I put on like my sleep t-shirt that I wore all the time when I was pregnant, and I put it on when I got home from the hospital, and it just like hung out, I cried because it's like I miss my belly. I'm all over the place, but that's kind of how life is right now. So it's hard, but it's also very rewarding. Backtrack a little. When I went in for my 1 month checkup with my doctor, of course she checked my incision, said that looked like it was healing great, and then the next thing she talked to me about was like mental health. And I explained to her, you know, feelings I was having, and told her a little bit about all this outside stuff that was going on in our life, not just us as baby and me and Adam, but like family stuff, dog stuff. So she decided it would be worth a try prescribing me Zoloft. So she prescribed that to me, and I tried it for a while, but then it just made me feel just out of it and numb. So I quit taking it, which I know you shouldn't just quit, but I did. And I mean, I'm doing so much better than I was, even though it doesn't look like it in this video. But literally, like the first month home, I cried multiple times every day. And now it's only a few times a week instead of a few times a day. So progress, people, progress. It's a madhouse. Like, even though Noodle is doing much better on her insulin, she does still have accidents occasionally, and having baby Remy, I can't take her out on walks every 2 hours. So I have to put her in a doggy diaper, and then sometimes like she and Remy both need a diaper change. So it's craziness, but Remy brings me so much joy. He's really getting to be a fun age now where he smiles all the time. He coos and talks to us all the time, and reacts when I read books to him and play with toys and talk to him. So he's not a stress factor. I mean, there are days where I'm like, oh my gosh, just go to sleep. I need a little time to myself. But it's literally everything else in life that is weight on our shoulders. Adam and I desperately want to move out of LA. We're actually planning on going to Atlanta, back to my home state, just because cost of living is so much better there, and we just needed a change of scenery. And you know, I like the idea of Remy having a yard to play in and a house. Like what we pay for this tiny apartment, we could rent a house in Atlanta, same price. So hopefully in this year we'll make it happen. This video ended up being quite a bit more emotional than I planned on it being. I hope it's not too much of a downer. I hope it's relatable, or I don't know. I hope it's positive in some way. If anything, it's good. I think good for me to get it out and not just vent to poor Adam all the time, but like just kind of like Dear Diary for myself. So yeah, I'm trying really hard to do some self-care, going on walks in the neighborhood with Remy in the stroller. That does wonders for me, getting out of this little apartment and just being in fresh air. There's a CVS not far, so sometimes we walk to CVS. And making videos has helped, honestly. It's given me something to do. I've worked in museums and libraries for the last 10 years, so to not have a job to go to every day is difficult. Like, I liked working. I love being with Remy way more. Trust me, I would always choose being with him, but it's all an adjustment. It's hard. Being a stay-at-home mom is hard. Everybody says it, and now I know it to be true. So I need to wrap this up because Remy is waking up from his nap now. I also need to eat lunch. Like I said, I hope this video is comforting or positive or just something good for you guys. And if you have any questions, further questions about my life postpartum, feel free to leave those in the comments below. I'll try to answer as many as I can. And yeah, that's it. So I'll see y'all next time with another video. Bye.